Hey everyone, my name is Tinlee Jeffrey and I'm a junior at Barron High School. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today, and I want to share my story. Not because it's perfect, but because God has already used it to shape who I am. And I believe He can do the same for all of you. Have you ever felt like life was against you before it even began? Maybe like the odds were stacked so high you didn't stand a chance. Well, that was me. When I was born, I was extremely sick with a brain infection. Doctors told my parents I had a 10% chance to survive. It then somehow dropped to 1%. 1%. That's not a typo. That's reality. And yet, here I am today, standing in front of all of you, alive, whole, full of hope. That's the beginning of my journey, from survival to purpose. Today, I want to take you on a journey from fear to faith, from surviving the impossible to discovering purpose, and from struggling alone to impacting others. Along the way, I'll share my fears, my doubts, my victories, and my faith. And I hope it inspires you to trust God with your story too. When I was born, I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis. For those who don't know, meningitis is a serious infection where your brain swells out of your skull and fluids surround your spinal cord. I was so sick that the doctors didn't think I was going to make it. Machines beeped, nurses prayed, and my parents watched every moment in fear. I couldn't imagine what it was like being them, sitting in that hospital room, not knowing if I would breathe another hour, nonetheless another day. I couldn't hear, I couldn't speak, I couldn't defend myself, and yet God was already at work. Somehow, against all odds, I survived. But survival wasn't the only challenge. I didn't pass my newborn hearing screening, which led the doctors and my parents to learn that I was completely deaf. I would go on to have 14 surgeries, including a double mastoidectomy, where they had to cut off my ear, move the bones around behind my ear, and totally reconstruct my skull. I remember waking up from one surgery, confused, in pain, and completely alone in a silent world. I couldn't hear my mom's voice. I couldn't hear anything. The world was quiet, and I felt so small. Living with partial hearing meant I could only hear 1 in every 3 words that someone said. Imagine trying to navigate that. The frustration, the isolation. Sometimes I felt invisible, sometimes different, sometimes like I didn't belong at all. But through it all, I started asking questions. Why am I still here? Why did God keep me alive? What is my purpose? Through these questions, I started to understand how God shapes a story through struggle, survival, and the quiet moments that seem impossible. As I grew up, I found a safe place in soccer. I started playing at 3 years old, and it became my escape. Soccer was where I could express myself, where I could connect with others, and where I first experienced a sense of accomplishment. But life outside of soccer wasn't so kind. In elementary and middle school, kids would whisper, tease, and target my hearing aids. I remember hiding in the bathroom just to avoid them. It was lonely, it was scary, and it hurt. I wrote poems about how I felt, saying, my mind is saying I'm unworthy, my heart is saying I'm alone. Those were my thoughts, my silent battles. Anxiety, self-doubt, and loneliness became part of my everyday life. When I was in 9th grade, I had been asked to play for a soccer team in the National Premier League. It had been a rough season. We lost most games. I didn't play at the level I used to on my local team, but the hardest part had nothing to do with the results. It was my team and my coach. Whether I saved a last-minute game-winning shot or I had just dropped the ball into my own goal, my team looked down upon me. What I did was never enough. It had been months of tears after games, frustration after practices, and debates of quitting soccer altogether. It was building up until I got to my breaking point, a college showcase. The pressure was already high, the nerves worse than ever, and when the whistle blew for the game to start, it all hit me. Standing on the goal line in front of over 20 college scouts, my team stood and watched as the other players ran to me over and over again. Shot, whistle, goal. Shot, whistle, goal. Shot, whistle, goal. 80 minutes later, we lost 6-0. Even though I had over 50 saves, some of which were the best of my life, I got yelled at by my coach, glared at by my teammates, and walked towards my parents with my head down and tears filling my eyes. I don't know what else I can do. I give my all every game, and no matter what, it's not enough. I hate this so much, I can't do this anymore. I broke down in my parents' arms, releasing all the feelings I had built up in the form of tears running down my face. After this, I made the decision to leave my national soccer team and to switch schools to Barron High School for my sophomore year. I was terrified. What if the bullying started again? What if it was even worse than before? But God had something else in mind. When I arrived, I was welcomed by everyone. For the first time, I experienced true community and acceptance and friendship. Even in the midst of bullying, anxiety, and uncertainty, God was present. My struggles were shaping me, even when I couldn't see the bigger picture. Within the first month at this new school, I decided to start a Fellowship of Christian Athlete huddle. I wanted to bring together students who love sports, but also wanted to grow in their faith. But it wasn't easy. I had to find an advisor, recruit students, organize meetings, all while being the new kid. But God guided me every step of the way. The first meetings were small, but the energy was incredible. Kids were hungry for something deeper, not just sports, but meaning, purpose, and God's love. Through FCA, I learned that helping others grow in their faith can transform your own life too. Sharing my story became a way to inspire and uplift others. I realized that my experiences weren't just for me. They were meant to help others see God's power and love in action. 3 meetings later, one girl shared that she had gotten baptized over the weekend and had used one of our FCA devotionals for her speech on why she was giving her life to Christ. This was such a beautiful moment where I was able to see the real life effects of FCA. During spring break of 2024, I decided to reflect on all I had been through. I thought about my struggles, my faith, and how God had carried me. I thought about all the little bits and pieces of my story that I had shared and how it had impacted people. I realized that I had never put my whole story together, so I sat down and started writing it all out. 5 days later, I had written and published my book, From Fear to Faith, a young girl's journey of finding Christ's light even in the dark. Writing gave me a voice, a way to process my story, and a chance to see God's hand in every chapter of my life. Through writing in FCA, I began to see my story, not just as a survival tale, but as a testimony, a way to inspire and encourage others. And that's when I realized God doesn't waste our struggles. He turns them into purpose. I began feeling strong, worthy, and filled with so much potential, but that's when my whole world came crashing down. July 1st, 2025, 12 a.m. My brother Tucker got a video message from his best friend Thomas. Thomas had been in my life since I was in 4th grade. He had been a close friend of both my siblings, practically another child to my parents, and as close to a brother as someone could be for me. The message was short but clear. He said how much he loved my brother, appreciated the times they had together, and how he was going to miss their friendship. Miss their friendship? As if getting a video like this from Thomas wasn't strange enough, why would he say he was going to miss him? My brother knew something was wrong. He called Gabe, another close friend of Thomas, and he said he had gotten a video also. They both got in their cars and drove. July 1st, 12:15 a.m. Tucker and Gabe had arrived at Thomas's house. All the lights were off and it was silent. They started banging on the door, ready to break in if needed. Thomas's dad answered the door and they explained the videos to him. They went to his room and Thomas wasn't in there. His dad pulled up Life 360 on his phone and tracked Thomas. He was in the woods behind their house. Thomas's dad, mom, and sister all went into the woods, while Gabe and Tucker stayed at the house waiting for police to arrive. July 1st, 2025, 12:30 a.m. They found Thomas in the woods, gun in hand, and deceased. He had committed suicide. The days following were somber for everyone. No one knew the extent at which he was struggling. This was my first loss, nonetheless my first suicide, and that at which was practically a brother. Many things crossed my mind, but the blame game was the worst. I didn't call him, I didn't text him. I had seen him 2 days before and never said anything. 1 week later, as I was leaving work at 11 o'clock at night, it hit me while I was on call with a friend. Thomas spent his whole life spreading joy, love, and happiness for everyone. He knew Jesus, and he was a Christian. And I finally put those two things together and said, Thomas spent so long in sadness and depression, and he was hurting and he was struggling, but yet he still made everyone around him feel so loved and so happy. He deserves to feel that love and happiness in heaven, just as he is now. My faith began to grow more than ever. I held on to the Bible as a lifeline and used it to help the people around me do the same. My faith journey led me to the Experience Jesus Conference, XJ, a nationwide event where young leaders gathered and learned how to tell people about Jesus. For 1 week, I spent 5 hours in classes about evangelism and 3 hours a day walking around downtown Chicago trying to tell random people on the streets about Jesus. It was intimidating, exhausting, yet so exhilarating. One person smiled at me and said, "Thank you for being the brave child that this religion needs." At that moment, I realized evangelism isn't just about preaching. It's about telling your story and relating to the human being in front of you. Then came the FCA Leadership Conference at University of Northwestern in Minnesota. I was asked to speak in front of nearly 1,000 people. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, and I whispered to myself, just breathe, just trust, just show up. And God gave me courage. I shared my story. People listened, they connected, and I knew that God was using my voice for his glory. After leaving the stage, there was a meeting area in the lobby where everyone went to talk to each other before camp ended. I was standing there, my heart still beating out of my chest, when a young girl named Ava came to me and told me her story. She said that she had been struggling with anxiety and depression for all of her life, just as I had shared about on stage. Ava said that 1 week before camp, she had decided that she was going to end her life. She picked up her phone and called her best friend Bella and simply said, "I just wanted to call and say I love you." She hung up, grabbed the bottle of pills from her bathroom, and sat on the floor, staring at the bottle. 5 minutes of thinking and crying later, she opened the bottle and dumped over 20 pills in her hand. Seconds later, red and blue lights filled her room. She quickly put the pills back in the bottle and stood up. Her mom opened her bedroom door and said that the police were here to see her. They had gotten an anonymous tip that she was going to take her life. Bella had known how much Ava was struggling mentally, and when she had gotten the phone call, she knew something was wrong and called 911. Ava ended up sitting outside her house with the police for 3 hours and told them all about how much she was struggling. From this, she got the help she needed and is now one of the strongest people I know. Hearing this, I broke down. I had just gone onto a stage in front of nearly 1,000 people and told them all about my struggles and how they were never alone. But I didn't truly believe what I was saying until this moment. This was a turning point in my life. I really started to see how every single person is struggling with something, and how one compliment, one smile, or one phone call can literally save a life. This is when I started looking for places to share my story and understand how powerful sharing your testimony is. There's a saying that I tell people a lot, and it goes like this: your testimony might be the only thing that can save someone. Bella's testimony might have saved Ava's, but not saved me. My testimony might have saved Bella, but not Ava. We each have a story that will impact someone in a way that nothing else can. And that's why I'm standing here today. Not because I have everything figured out, not because my life is perfect, but because I've learned that staying silent can be dangerous, and speaking up can be life-saving. Ava lost her life because she felt alone, but Bella saved her before she could go through on it. And I never would have understood the power of my own story if Ava hadn't been brave enough to share hers with me. And who knows what someone's story could have impacted Thomas if they would have said it. Every single one of us carries something. Fear, anxiety, pain, doubt, hurt, but we hide it because we think no one will understand. But the truth is, there's always someone who needs to hear exactly what you've been through. Someone who is praying for a sign, someone who just needs to know that they're not alone. Sharing your story doesn't mean you have to stand on a stage. It might be that you're just checking in on a friend. You're smiling at someone who thinks they're invisible. You're sending a text to a family member you haven't seen in a long time. You're making a phone call to the person that's struggling, or you are having the courage to say that you're struggling. Your story matters. Your voice matters, and you matter. And God can use even your hardest moments for His glory and someone else's healing. So if you take anything from my story today, let it be this: reach out, speak up, and share your story, because you never know whose life might depend on it.